Hello and welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Well, guys, last week we saw a flurry of confirmation hearings between, it was, what was it, Kash Patel, it was Tulsi Gabbard, and it was RFK Jr. But RFK Jr. seemed to bring the house down. The word is that there weren't as many people had never seen so many people pack the hill as far as a confirmation hearing was concerned. I don't know if Caroline was there. She'll share that with us in just a second. But I brought on a guest. I've seen her a couple of times on Fox News. She's a great communicator. She has a business that's very interesting, but she's a MAHA mom. And I wanted to hear more from her. So Caroline Carrelero, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show.
Thanks, Carl. It's great to be with you.
All right. And by the way, Caroline, I am so proud of myself for nailing your last name, I think.
I'm proud of you as well. We've got some good blooper reels in the works here of a lot of trouble pronouncing the Spanish last name. So.
Oh, man, that is cool. That is cool. Okay. All right. So now I originally saw you on Fox. I mean, obviously, you're very well informed. Tell me. Are you originally, are you a Democrat, Republican? Not that it necessarily matters, but I just want to kind of figure out where to go for the sake of this conversation, if you don't mind.
Yeah, totally. So just by means of introduction, I'm born and raised in California. Born and raised in Sacramento. I was raised in a conservative household with conservative values, but we had great discussions growing up, right? And so I definitely formed my own opinions and my own beliefs as I grew up. But we were fortunate, and most credit to my parents. We were raised in a very strong family and in a family that was God-fearing, which I think a lot of this comes from. But professionally, I started my career very young at the age of 17, 18 in the food and beverage industry, worked in the food and beverage industry for over a decade, had the privilege of seeing a lot of fast growth in several different companies, and got to learn a lot about the supply chain and creating products and servicing every single grocery store you've ever heard of in the US, and all the way from your local grocer to Costco and Walmart and all the big guys. And so I learned a lot about health and wellness, and particularly became very committed to how do we improve American health. And so recently just had a child as well. And so now it's just kind of totally full circle. But yeah, I mean, my background's pretty diverse in the sense that, I've lived in California and lived in Atlanta and other places in the US as well. But yeah, I would say much more conservative values. But yeah, I mean, the reality is this particular issue is so interesting because it's not political, or at least it shouldn't be. Of course, it's being, it's being it's now politicized because of this hearing and because of Trump and everything else. It always ends up being, but this isn't a Democrat or Republican thing. This is just pure, human health at stake. And that's what's, I think, pretty fascinating about this particular issue, because you look at what's happening even in California with Gavin Newsom getting on the, not MAHA train, he wouldn't say that, but definitely the health and wellness, getting some of the garbage and the highly processed foods just a few weeks ago, right, out of things like kids' lunches. So it's really not partisan at all. And the very interesting thing is that this is an issue that if you look at it at face value, the Democrats should have owned. Historically, they were the ones that owned this kind of health and wellness type of issue. And so it's a big opportunity, right? When you saw that coming together of RFK Jr. and Trump, I mean, unbelievable that a Kennedy, was one to give to join forces with a Republican, let alone Trump. But it's not a political issue, which is very, very interesting.
You say something very, I think that's very important. You're right. I mean, this is an issue that typically you would have thought the left would have owned, especially after they had gone after the cigarette industry and so on, et cetera. I'm in complete and total agreement with you. This is a nonpartisan issue, which is why I'm fascinated with the pushback from the Democrat Party when it comes to RFK Jr. I too am a conservative, and so I got to tell you, I mean, just right off the bat, Caroline, there's some issues with RFK Jr. that I'm like, whoa, it's like Trump said, hey, we'll bring him in for HHS. We want him to handle, make America healthy again, but I want him to stay away from the issue of climate change, abortion, so on, et cetera. But this is an issue that I thought Democrats did own. Why the pushback from is so hard against RFK Jr. in your opinion?
Well, I mean, it's Democrats and Republicans aside, there's been just an incredible stronghold over the Senate and politicians in general from big pharma, period, and food and pharma. So the way that you have to look at it is, I spent time a few weeks ago at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, which is kind of the leading conference of all the drug manufacturers in the world. And it is an incredible amount. I don't think people really realize this, an incredible amount of power in a room like that. I mean, you're talking about some of the most powerful organizations in the world. For context, an easy way to kind of describe this is that healthcare is the largest industry in the world, and it's also the fastest growing. So it is more powerful than tech. I mean, when you really think about it, right? I mean, to put it into context, that is what's at stake here. And so both sides of the aisle, but notably some of these Democrats that were just losing their minds, right? That we all saw the public show last week. They're receiving, and you probably saw this on social media. There was this circulation of, it was like a screenshot of like a spreadsheet that showed each of the senators' names and how much they're receiving from pharma.
Yes.
And
I wrote it down and mentioned it on air. Yes.
Follow that path and you can see, okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? That is where their loyalty lies, is where they're getting money from. So there's that going on. But there's also this really kind of perverse, and I will say, I mean, it's been said it's a spiritual issue. It is. I mean, you look at this, it's a very perverse issue that there is nothing more profitable for this industry than a sick child. And there's no way around that. You just look at the math. It's very black and white. And you see, okay, now our children are so sick, and they, the rates, I mean, these stats are so well circulated at this point, so it's probably repetitive for your audience, but 38% of our children are pre-diabetic. You've got half of our teenagers are on some sort of antidepressant. So, I mean, they're so sick, being fed pharmaceutical Band-Aid after pharmaceutical Band-Aid. And what has that gotten us? Well, it's a failed system, but it's a very profitable system. Let me
ask you this, Caroline, because I think there's so many people out there in big pharma. I totally agree. It is an issue, but I want to ask this. Do you think that big pharma is simply, hey, we're out here making money because the need is so great? Or do you think it's a nefarious purpose by big pharma themselves? Am I making sense? In other words, the cigarette companies, I did not know this until recently. All right. So the cigarette companies are basically the ones that started making all of this addictive, stuff, putting on cereals and all that kind of stuff. Had no idea up until recently. So is it just big pharma reacting to big food, or you know what I'm saying?
They work together, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, one gets you sick, the other one, gives you a Band-Aid fix, but doesn't get to the root cause of it. There's nothing that can replace food, and there's nothing that replaces lifestyle intervention, period, no matter what anyone says. As someone who runs a company that sells supplements are great. They can be used, and they should be used to supplement nutrient deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies, to help with things like we do with the gut microbiome and digestive health. They have a place, they've got a role. It's so important. They do not replace food. And that's where this all starts. Wow. So this starts with the breakdown of what people are eating. And then, and that starts with big food and what they've done, which is criminal. There's no other way. There's no other way to describe it. It is absolutely criminal. What has gotten into our food that has not been allowed in cosmetics for 35 years, but yet you can just walk in and these dyes and everything else are in things like children's Tylenol. Why? There's absolutely no reason why. Candy, et cetera, et cetera. So that is wrong. They know it's wrong. That is wrong. That needs to be addressed. And then pharma comes in with kind of this Band-Aid. And pharma is not trying to put itself out of business, right? So it's a Band-Aid fix that doesn't ever get to the root of the problem. So I don't think it's all malicious. I do think that there's a time and a place, like with vaccines, there's absolutely a time and a place for them. They play a role in this that is helpful, but we have gone way too far. And all you have to do is just with anything, look at the results. The results are complete and utter failure. If it worked, we should keep going down that path, but it's not working. So there has to be another way, which you have to get back to the lifestyle intervention. So again, I don't think it's all bad, not necessarily at all. There's a role and there's a time and a place, but what's going on right now in America is complete and utter failure. So we have to choose a different path.
And honestly, I think this is the time to do it. I'm speaking with my guest, Caroline Carrelero. She is the owner of the business Daily Nori. We'll get into that in the next block, and also probably play a clip or two of RFK Jr. at his hearing. I want to get her take on a couple of things. And then also I have some questions about big government. I mean, we want government to kind of step in a way and do something. It almost feels counterintuitive to the conservative mindset. I'm not sure that it is. I want Caroline to help me work through this. So we'll be back. She's gonna help me out in the next block. We'll be back. Hey, Carl Jackson here for MyPillow. For years, customers have been asking if MyPillow sells cross necklaces like the one Mike Lindell proudly wears every day. Well, they are excited to announce that Mike has partnered with a jeweler right here in the USA to create beautiful sterling silver My Crosses. So right now you can save 30% today using promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, at mypillow.com. Click on the radio podcast square or give them a call at 800-858-0263 and be sure to use the promo code Carl. You can choose from the women's or men's style. The My Cross for women has a more delicate look and is reversible with mother of pearl styled translucent white enamel on one side and onyx styled black enamel on the other. The My Cross for men has a slightly larger cross with onyx styled black enamel and a slightly longer, thicker chain. So this amazing offer isn't going to last long. Order now. Go to mypillow.com. Click on the radio podcast square or call 800-858-0263. Use promo code Carl. And don't forget, there are so many deals available at mypillow.com. Use promo code Carl. Hey, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, I'm joined by my guest, Caroline Carrelero. She is the owner of the Daily Nori, which we'll get into in just a second. She's also a MAHA mom. And before we went to the break, I was kind of struggling with the big government issue. I love the fact that Trump and RFK Jr. want to do things to make America healthy again. But as a conservative, I don't want government telling me what to do. I'm a choice guy. Caroline, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking to Carl about this offline, but I think the core here is, RFK Jr. said it in the hearing, right? His boss, referring to President Trump, eats McDonald's, right? And Diet Coke. And so there's no taking away options. In fact, a lot of these leaders of the MAHA movement, to be frank, used to be Democrats, and they used to be libertarians. There's a lot of that kind of thought in this. This is not about taking away choice at all. There's never been a mention of that. This is about restructuring incentive programs and what's going on, particularly with programs like the SNAP program. That's a great example. The number one item that's purchased with SNAP dollars is soda. Soda can be thought of as like a diabetes water. There's, about 39 grams of sugar in one can of Coca-Cola. Is that what we should be feeding our country and those that need help with assistance? No, that's not. That's a very awful thing. And in fact, something that's going to hurt them even more and keep them in poverty. That is a really awful item for that to be the number one thing purchased with SNAP. That's one example. Another example of I call these like the low hanging fruit. The other fixes is our school lunch programs. Our school lunch programs right now are atrocious. And you've got about 29 to 30 million children in the US, over 50% of children in the state of California, where I live, that are on government-assisted breakfast and lunch. That's a really big opportunity to start to help children reduce sugar, processed foods. The other thing is just getting to the root of all of the highly processed foods and the incentive structures that were put in place. There were incentive structures put in place for very harmful things that are now all throughout our food system. Those incentive structures need to be taken out. There's a couple of just really easy fixes. It's not going to change at all what you can buy. It's going to change the quality of what you can buy, which is important. We shouldn't be able to sell poison to people. That's wrong, right? And we shouldn't be able to sell harmful things to people. But if anything else, it should just be labeled. If we're going to have those items, they should just be labeled like cigarettes are labeled. You have to be honest about the impact that we know. We've known the impact of these ingredients for decades. Some of these ingredients, you have to be honest about those on the front of the label. If every company had to do that, that alone would be a way more honest way to help parents and help everyone navigate the grocery store. Because I'll be, honest, even with as much knowledge and understanding as I have of how things are made and how things get to the store, when I go and shop, you're shopping for your family, it takes a lot of time to go through and dissect everything. That's what's wrong. That's what's not right. And we know that there's very harmful things in these products, and they need to be labeled as such at the bare minimum.
No, I totally agree with you. And I appreciate you explaining that. And I do agree. If you're going to get any type of assistance from the federal government, we shouldn't be poisoning you with that. I'm totally okay, especially if you're getting a welfare of some sort. I mean, I don't want to kill people. I don't want to poison people. I don't want to give them diabetes, for God's sake. So let me ask you this. Again, I'm speaking with my guest, Caroline Carrelero. Real quick, Caroline, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so you can find my company, Daily Nori, Daily, and then Nori is Nouri, Daily Nori on all social handles. And then I'm on Instagram as well, Caroline Beckman, my maiden name. So yeah, you guys can find us online. Being the easiest way to find our products on our website is just to go either on Amazon or on our website, Daily Nori. We're available nationally as well with retailers like Walmart, Albertsons, Safeway, most of your grocery stores throughout the country.
All right. That's perfect. Okay, so now you're a MAHA mom, but you're a conservative. You're backing RFK Jr. Did RFK Jr. bring you to Trump? Were you already a Trump supporter? How did that work?
Yeah, no, we've already been behind Trump. I mean, the policies of, frankly, just securing our nation and our border. I mean, that's really important to us and our family. We live in California. We've seen this. We've seen, again, it's just really simple. I mean, this isn't, of course it's political, but it's really simple. If what we had been doing was working, we should keep doing it. And it's not working. It's not working. People are getting sicker. Our country is getting weaker. People are dying. Personally, you see it all throughout California. You see the impact of a drug like fentanyl. It should be incredibly alarming to everyone that we're seeing young men and young women as early as their 30s, 20s, all throughout the streets. I mean, it's a really big problem, and it's not being solved. So there's just some core issues that, outside of the food issues, outside of the health and wellness issues, this isn't about even the business ownership side of things, which is obviously tends to lean more conservative. But yeah, and then RFK, I think there's not a perfect person. There's not a perfect politician. And I think a lot of people get caught in that, trying to find everything that's wrong with everyone. But the reality is, where are we at and what do we need right now? And when it comes to health and HHS and the FDA and the NIH, we are at a fork in the road and we need to try a different path. And if you can't at least get on that level of, hey, what we're doing hasn't worked, then there's something fundamentally wrong with how you're dealing with facts, because the facts are just so plain and simple that what we've been doing hasn't worked. So at least getting someone to the point of, hey, we should try something else. This has been the most productive path forward that we've seen. And the people that are being put in charge of the NIH and the FDA are terrific people. I mean, these people are going to really get us back to what we should be as a leading nation in the standard of health and science and research. So I think there was a comment made in the hearing. I don't know if you caught it, but someone said something about settled science. It's settled science. There is no such thing as settled science.
No, it's the same argument they use with climate change.
Settled science doesn't exist. There's no such thing as settled science. So the point here is that we have to keep going. We have to keep exploring. We have to keep innovating. But what we've been doing hasn't worked. That's it. So time to try something new.
Yeah, and it's a fair point. I mean, the only reason that I could guess that there's so much pushback when it comes to RFK Jr. is the obvious. I mean, obviously people are getting kickbacks from this stuff, and this nonsense has to stop. And another thing that I'm concerned about is just the power that these bureaucratic agencies have. I'll be frank with you: if RFK Jr. gets confirmed, I'd like to see some of the power from the HHS go away. The same with the FDA and IH, so on, et cetera. Let me ask you this. We only have a few minutes left with my guest, Caroline Carrelero. She is the owner of Daily Nori. So tell us real quick, what is Daily Nori? What is that about? What is your business about?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Carl. So Daily Nori is a gut microbiome health company. So we work on finding what are the highest quality clinically supported products, bringing those to market for the gut microbiome. So if you haven't heard of that, it's the ecosystem of bacteria that's in and on your body. And so it's really lives in your digestive tract. About 70% of your immune cells are in your digestive tract. So effectively, you don't have an immune system without this very important digestive tract and the ecosystem of bacteria. So we make all different products, primarily probiotic-based, prebiotic-based products. The core areas of research and innovation for us have been women's health. So things like hormone health, menopause, helping women during these very critical need states, and then also metabolic and weight health. So we're very invested in this crisis that our country is going through, that our world is going through, which is this metabolic health crisis. And so products for, we like to say, all ages and stages of life, and very focused on all things digestive health. So it's been a phenomenal journey. We've got a long way to go. We're obviously at a very critical time in our business, as we are in our country, and no shortage of Americans to help. So we're just doing our best to scale our business and to have the highest quality and most accessible products.
All right. We have just over maybe a minute and a half or so left. Speak to the moms out there, Caroline, when it comes to what is in the foods. What made you a MAHA mom? What should other moms be aware of, concerned about? How is this food impacting their children?
Yeah, well, it's really simple, right? So, we've got an obesity and 74% of the country obese or overweight. And so we effectively don't have a future. Our children's future is at stake. Even if we do the best we can as parents that are cautious about what we're giving our children, their peer group is at stake. When you look at half of teenagers right now on some sort of pharmaceutical, 38% pre-diabetic, their entire peer group in future is at stake, which is awful. The government cannot run. You look at this example of even like air traffic controllers and how intense that job is. You need to be physically and mentally healthy in order to have a healthy nation, period. There's no way around that. So from a parent perspective, you're looking at, okay, what am I leaving behind? And what are my children going to have to deal with? And a lot of it's just getting the highly processed foods and the sugars out of their diet. That's the main thing with foods that's really wrong with them. Of course, these dyes and all these different chemicals and things. But from a mission perspective, why this matters is because it's their entire generation is at risk. And therefore the future of our country, which is why this is not just a, fringe organic health and wellness movement. This is a national security issue. This is so much bigger than that, because it's literally what we're going to pass on. And right now, as it stands today, what we're going to pass on is pretty bad, and notably might not be something we can come back from unless we make a really big change. So that's why it's important for parents. There's a lot that you can get out of your kids' food, but the main thing is just trying to reduce the ultra processed foods and the sugars. Just do your best every day.
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Caroline Carrelero, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Carl.